the functions of the air brakes. What are the parts of the air brake system? Because when you're driving commercial motor vehicles, you need to know these functions, right? Now, you have three parts: the service brake, the parking brake, and the emergency brake. Okay. Now, the service brake applies and releases the brakes when you use the brake pedal, right? When you're actually driving on the road. Parking brake is when you're actually putting the vehicle in park and you're using one of the yellow knob for the parking brake. And then the emergency brake is when the same thing applies. So don't worry, as we go through this, you'll learn more and more, and it's mainly about repetition. The more you see it, the more you understand the terminology, the better you'll be able to see it in a different view. So when it comes to the air brake system, this is just a clear picture. You know how you get a puzzle or have a box and you see the picture of a puzzle and you see the pictures all together, right? But when you open it, you see the little bits and pieces and you're trying to figure out how to put it all together. So this is just an example of the air brake system and all of its components. Now, do I have to memorize all of this? Well, no, not necessarily, but you do have to recognize what are these parts, right? So we're going to start it and take it big chunks and chunks, piece by piece. Okay. So the first thing and first part that we're going to mention is the air compressor. So the air compressor is what pumps air into the storage tanks, and that's called reservoirs. And when the compressor has its own oil supply, then you want to check that oil level, right? So usually that's the air compressor is in commercial vehicles as well. Then you got the air compressor governor or the air governor. So the air governor is just that where it controls the air pressure, right? It controls and it cuts off between approximately 120 to 140 psi's or approximately 125 to 140. Okay. So when the pressure tank is full, right, then it'll cut off at that point. But when it gets approximately 100 psi's, that air governor will actually allow to build the air compressor. It'll actually build the air pressure again. So those are the main difference between an air compressor and an air governor. Other parts is the air storage tanks. So it's used to hold compressed air, and the number and size varies, of course, among vehicles, right? And when it comes to the air take drains, now, of course, there's two types, right? Keep in mind with air take drains, it's compressed air, usually has some water, right? Some compressor oil in it, and that's usually bad for the brake system. So to resolve this, that's why you have to drain the air tanks. That's why you have the draining valve. And it's two parts, right? You have a manual and then you have an automatic air drain, right? So when you're operating by turning pretty much manual, you are usually turning it the cable and you're draining the tanks yourself. Versus automatic, the water and oil literally automatically drains itself, right? Now, of course, what to keep in mind is you want to drain this daily. Now, other parts of the braking system, you have the air evaporator. So that helps to reduce the risk of ice and air brake valves, right? Now, when it comes to safety valve, right, that protects the tank and the rest of the system from having too much pressure. And usually that valve is usually set to open at approximately 150 psi's. Now, when it comes to the brake pedal, now of course I'm not going to insult your intelligence by telling you what a brake pedal is. You all should definitely well know what a brake pedal is, right? So, but what to keep in mind though is with the brake pedal, with using air brakes, right? Pressing and releasing that pedal unnecessarily will let that air faster than the compressor can replace it. So in other words, if you are applying that air brake too fast or too much, then that means that the pressure gets too low and it won't have time for that air compressor to build more air. Otherwise, that means the brakes won't work because you don't have enough air to stop the vehicle. So that is definitely to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to the other parts of the braking system, you do have front brake limiting valve, right? So that's mainly you're not going to really see that. That's really vehicles that's older models, vehicles made before 1975, right? But these are the types of parts that guaranteed is going to be mentioned during the general knowledge test. So definitely be aware of that. You want to make sure that's in a controlled, normal position. And when it comes to the spring brakes, right? Spring brakes, you want to pull the knob out of the parking brakes, right? And push it in to release them. So that's just the concept. So when you push in to release, that means you are relieving it from its function. Because the parking brake is to what? Keep it at park. When you push it in, you're releasing it from its duties. So that means you can be able to drive. When you pull it, that means you're applying it. It's in use. You're not. It's in park. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. Now, when we go to the brake drum, shoes, and linings, right? You'll see the diagram of how this works. So, what to keep in mind though, you do have the brake drum, shoes, linings, right? You want to make sure that it's not worn dangerously thin, and you want to keep in mind also that you have the S cam brakes. So that's part of that. When you push the brake pedal, air is let into each brake chamber, and the air pressure actually pushes the rod out, which is moving the slack adjuster. When it comes to the other components, you do have wedge brakes and disc brakes. Now, keep in mind the disc brakes, though, it's rarely used, but definitely keep in mind that the pressure of the brake chamber or slack adjuster, it turns the power screw. So you want to keep in mind that the wedge brakes, disc brakes are definitely less known, right? Or less common than S-cam brakes. Now, what you do need to know when it comes to wedge brakes is that the brake chamber and push rod will be facing into the brake. Definitely, that explains the overview of what the brake components are. So just keep in mind what is going to be on the actual air brake test, the air brake learner's test, and that definitely explains it as well. So, of course, when we talk about the other components, we do have the supply pressure gauges, right? So pressure gauges, they are the gauges that's connected to the air tank. Okay. Now, if the vehicle has a dual air brake system, right, there will be a gauge for each civilizing half of the system. So when you look on the picture to your right, that's a picture of a air pressure gauge, right? And you'll see that it will be usually it's between 120 to 140 psi, indicating that the air compressor is full of air. So when it comes to applying the pressure gauge, right, how much pressure that you're applying to the brakes, right, you want to keep in mind that as you're pumping the brakes, the low air warning light will come on at approximately 60 psi, right? And you want to keep in mind of that. So when this happens, right, you want to slow down, you want to stop, right? Now, of course, the automatic, like I said, low air device light or flag or buzzer will come on at approximately 60 psi. Okay, so that's what they mean by the low air pressure warning light. Okay, now when it comes to the stop light switch, now this turns on the brake lights when you put on the air brakes. Now, of course, the air brake system does this with an electric switch, and that works just by using the air pressure. So, of course, there are three two braking controls. You have the parking brakes, which is the brakes for your emergency brakes, right? When you're pushing a vehicle, you're releasing it, you're using it to drive, or if you're applying the brakes to park it, right? Or if you're using it for emergencies as well. That's all in one brake. Now, you do have the trailer air supply, right? That is the air brake for the trailer brakes, okay? So, what to keep in mind though, the caution is never push the brake pedal down when the spring brakes are on, because if you do that, the brakes could be damaged by combining those forces, right? And the springs and the air pressure as well. So you do not want to push the brake pedal down when the actual parking brake, right? Parking brake, spring brakes are the same thing. When it's on, when it's in, when you are applying it and you're in park, you do not want to push that brake pedal down. Now, when it when you're talking about the duo parking protection control valve, this is usually in tractor trailers, right? And that what that does is it puts the control air and it separates it from the air tanks and it release the spring brakes so that way you can still be able to move. We briefly talked about this in the general knowledge section, but just be aware that air brakes does have anti-lock braking systems as well. Now, just a reminder, ABS will not allow you to drive faster. It won't prevent, or turning skids. But remember that the best vehicle safety feature is still safe, right? When you're using ABS. Now, you can drive and so you the goal is for you to drive and you don't have to use ABS. But if needed, that's when it'll be there because it can help prevent a serious crash. When it comes to inspecting the air brake systems, you want to check the air compressor drive belt. And usually that is definitely in commercial vehicles, depending on which vehicle it is. Sometimes the belt can be gear driven or belt driven, right? But either way, you want to check for the snugness. Make sure it's no more than 3/4 inch of play at the center of the belt, and it should have no cracks or frays. Okay. Also, of course, when you're checking the slack adjusters and S cam on the brakes, you want to make sure you park on level ground, wheel chocks. You also, when you pull the slack adjusters, you want to make sure that it does not move no more than 1 inch from where the push rod is attached. Okay, and when it comes to checking the lines, brake drums, brake hoses, they cannot be worn dangerously thin. Just keep in mind that that is what you have to do. Well, that's one of the things that you don't necessarily have to know specifically, what is the function of the relay valve, but this is just an overarching of how the air brake system works. So that way, as you know, when you're expecting it, you want to make sure that you can be able to see these parts in a different and understanding way. So when it comes to inspecting the air brake systems, you want to test the low pressure warning signal, as I mentioned before, of when the low air warning signal, right, when it comes on, right, it must come before the pressure drops approximately 60 psi, right? That's how you can test to see if the low air warning light will come on. And then when you check that the spring brakes come on automatically, you keep fanning, pumping the brakes, right, until the parking brake comes on approximately between 20 to 45 psi. And then when you check the rate of the air pressure, right, the air pressure should build from at least 85 to 100 psi within 45 seconds when it comes to the dual air braking system, right? Now, what to keep in mind is if the air pressure does not build up fast enough, then the pressure itself may drop too low during, driving, or and as a result that will require an emergency stop. That will require you to stop, because if the air pressure is not building up enough, then that means that it's a leak, and you definitely need to be aware of that. So keep in mind, if you want to, when you're testing the air leakage though, it's 3 steps. First, you want to shut off the engine, right? You want to push in that parking brake, the yellow knob. You want to push in that parking brake. And if you're driving a tractor trailer and that trailer service knob, you want to push in that as well. And what you want to do is you want to then hold on the brake for 1 minute. And if it loses more than 3 psi's in 1 minute, if it's just for a single trailer or single vehicle, or if it's 4 psi's with a combination vehicle. So if you lose 3 or 4 psi's in that 1 minute when you hold your feet on the brake pedal, then that means that it's a possible leak, air leak. And you want to definitely check for air leaks and fix that before operating the vehicle, because otherwise you'll lose those brakes while you're driving. So also, when it comes to checking the cut-in and the cut-out pressure of the air governor, when you pump the air compressor or build the air pressure up, right, it will start approximately 100 psi's to be able to control that, and it will stop between 120 to 140. And the air compressor itself is going to build up, automatically, but the air governor controls that. So the air governor cuts on at 100 psi's, right, and it'll stop between 120 to 140. So keep in mind that an air governor does not work properly, right? Or if it does not work properly, you may not have enough air pressure for safe driving. Now, of course, testing the parking brake is stopping the vehicle, pulling the parking brake out, and gently apply the gas, right? Making sure that the parking brake will hold. And of course, the service brake is the actual brake that you use to, slow down and stop the vehicle. You want to pull forward 5 miles an hour, apply the service brake, and stop, right? And then you'll check to see that the bus doesn't pull or the vehicle doesn't pull to either side. And of course, here are the basic components of the braking drum as well. Just give another clear visual view. So when you're using the air brakes, of course, same thing applies as we mentioned in the general knowledge portion. The stopping distance equals perception plus reaction plus brake distance equals the total stopping distance. And as I said before, take consistent action, knowing that you're not in this alone, right? Knowing that at the end of the day, this is going to help you have a better job, better income for you and your families. It will help build that just by taking these steps.
This video was sponsored by BET Life Services and CDL for Life. If you really enjoyed the value of this video, just click comment what you liked. And then if you really want to get more updates on more future videos, life-changing videos, then go ahead and click the subscribe button so that way you can be able to be updated on the latest videos. Now, there's a free offer that is underneath of this video. You got to click the link to get it because it may not be available. BET Life Services and CDL for Life is offering this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to change your life for the better by giving away bonuses that's worth hundreds of dollars or more. But the link is down below, and it's not guaranteed that it's going to be there the next time you see it. And it's only going to be available to those who take action, and it's only available for a certain amount of people. So if you want to get access to this life-changing opportunity to change your life, click down below. so you can get instant access to the free bonuses down below. So go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in the next video.